So welcome. Yes, okay, so we are recording this. Welcome everyone to the August Northeast Community Policing Council. Thank you for joining us this evening. And unfortunately, I will tell you that Detective Shaun Willoughby, the president of the APOA, the Police Association, had a conflict with some training that he had to do for the next 4 nights, and so he will not be able to be here this evening. We will plan to reschedule him hopefully next month. So we're sorry to tell you that, but I guess training comes first and we want them all trained, so probably a good thing there. Okay, so I'd like to get started with basically who we are, kind of what our mission is for those individuals who are new and just joining us for the first time. The mission of the Community Policing Councils is to promote and maintain inclusive, respectful, and cooperative interactions between the community and the Albuquerque Police Department to ensure constitutional community policing reforms are met and sustained. Our purpose is to reestablish community trust with APD and work closely with them to develop a comprehensive community policing approach that collaboratively identifies and implements strategies to address crime and safety issues. So that's basically who we are. I'd like for each of the council members to introduce themselves. We'll go ahead and start with who is on my tiles here, and it looks like Zane is the first individual. So Zane.
Hello, my name is Zane Bilal. I am a longtime resident of Albuquerque. I've been here since '06. I attended the University of New Mexico. I do business development in the area. I do real estate and manufactured homes. I was a boxer, and I primarily spend most of my time in the South Valley, like the Sticks area. And I'm really in touch with the community here, especially the African-American community. And, you know, I feel like I have a lot to bring to the CPC.
Okay, thanks, Zane. Roy?
Hi, I'm Roy Turpin, Vice Chair. I've been a member since December of last year. Retired city employee, put in 25 years with the city. 22 of those years I spent with APD. Welcome everybody this evening. Hope we have a great meeting.
Thanks, Roy. Dina?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us. I just want to say to all the participants, thank you for wanting to get in touch with how you can be impactful to the city and help us. So thank you for your interest. I've been on the council for a couple of years, and I work for the city. I'm a mom and a business owner.
Okay, thank you. Rick?
You're on mute, Rick.
I was just saying how new I am, and I'm always on mute. I'm just I'm just learning this now, how to Zoom and be a member of this. So as I was saying, I'm the newest member. I'm been on for about 3 months. I work at Sandia National Laboratories. I'm a principal technologist, computer expert over there with them right now. I joined our neighborhood association over here in McKinley, and we started our neighborhood watch. So this led into a good evolution on how to be involved within the community over here. I'm down over on Candelaria and Carlisle, and we've seen our share of rise in crime. So that was one of the things that we agreed that we're going to start trying to be more involved, and this is a good way to be more involved. And to meet our police, support our police officers, to understand what our problems are within the city, and to be able to contribute as a voice.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Troy?
Hello, everyone. I am Troy Taylor. I've been on the board for 5 years now. I've been living here in Albuquerque for about 10, so this is the new home for me. I have 4 children, which I'm raising, and the board has been essential just in a midst of me living across the nation in different places. I feel we all have the same issues, just different names we call it, different problems that we're addressing. But the underlying core issue is still the same. We have issues that we need to address. So working with you all, I hope that we can be a voice for you to be able to express any concerns that you might have and be able to address anything that you feel we need to address. We want to be your voice in the community between the police department and you. So feel free to ask us any questions, email us anytime, and bring up anything that may be of concern to you or your neighbors so we can address it accordingly. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Troy. We also have Cassandra. She is online. I'm not sure if she's able to get on. I think she may be traveling. So Cassandra has been on the board. Oh, here she is.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cassandra Morrison. I am a retired Field Service Bureau Sergeant from the Albuquerque Police Department. Been on the board for approximately 3 years, a little over 3 years now. And I am the sole member of the membership committee.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's everyone. So,
Willie's on now.
pardon me. Oh, Willie? I don't see him.
I'm finally here. I had issues signing on.
Oh, okay, there he is. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't. I couldn't get it to work. I apologize. Hi, I'm Willie Orr. I've been on the council since the first year. I'm a semi-retired geriatric physician.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And I'm Vicki Williams. I'm the chair, and I've been on the board since 2018. So going on, this is my 4th year. I've been the chair for the last 3.
Kenneth.
All right. So I guess the first thing that we need to do is approve the agenda for today. And so Martisa, there. Oh, there's Kenneth. Sorry, I didn't see you there. Kenneth is also. Go ahead.
I'm Kenneth Armijo. I'm a CPC member since last August of 2020. And yeah, glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. So Martisa, there will be some changes to the agenda, some amendments. We probably need to remove Detective Shaun Willoughby as the speaker, seeing he will not be able to attend this evening. And we wanted to add Interim Deputy Chief Brown. And I'm thinking that Deputy Chief Smathers was also planning to attend, but I don't see him yet. So if he comes on, let's go ahead and add those 2 individuals. Okay, so it may be a relatively short evening. So could we get an approval for the changes to the August agenda from the council?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And approval of the July minutes. If the
So moved.
council has had a chance to read them, okay?
I
So
did.
moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Okay, so next would have been Detective Willoughby. So what I would like to do is ask the new interim deputy chief, or Deputy Chief Brown, to speak a little bit about his role as commander or deputy chief of field services. I believe he was the commander of the Valley. I'm not for sure how long, but he can tell us a little bit about his career at APD and what he hopes to see as far as changes in field services. So Deputy Chief Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me on your CPC, Madam Chair, and the rest of the council. My name is Josh Brown. I'm the interim deputy chief for field services, which essentially I oversee all 6 area commands. I was previously assigned as the commander for the Valley Area Command. I was there for approximately 2 years. Prior to that, like I said, this is my 21st year with APD. So I've been here for a minute or two, and I've seen a lot of changes come and go through APD. A little bit about myself. I'm my husband. I'm a resident of Albuquerque. I have a wife, 2 kids. My daughter's 14 and my son's 12. My experiences with APD ranged from Field Services Bureau. I was in the tactical section with K9 SWAT. I was promoted to sergeant, spent some time in the field as a field sergeant, and I was an auto theft sergeant for a number of years. We also, this period of time, I was a lieutenant when I got promoted to property crimes, oversaw property crimes as well as violent crimes for a time. Then I got promoted to commander, and then I've been was involved in the new violence intervention division with the VIP program at its initial stages, and then I was transferred to the Valley Area Command, taking over for Deputy Chief Donnie Oliveira. He recently retired again for the second time. He came in at a pivotal time. There's some organizational changes and stepped in to help. And through personal reasons of his own, he decided to re-retire. So wish him well. Did a great job while he was here as well. So yeah. I see in the chat already, I'm getting questions. So let's see. How many officers are in the force at the moment? And how many of those are actually patrolling a beat? So good question. So for the beat officers that we have in the field, we just bid 356 officers. So there's 356 sworn officers who drive around in the marked police cars. I don't know how many exactly numbers we have in the DOJ response team. And I'm not sure what a tooth to tail ratio is. If you want to expand on that a little bit more, but we just had the bid. And with that, we kind of moved the schedules around a little bit. It went from 410s across the board to a 5/8 schedule with some modifications in there. There's a couple of shifts on each watch that have the 10 still, and all of graveyard is still on 410. One of the reasons we did that is just for.
So Deputy Chief, could you go over those schedules again so that we can write them down? Because the people that are interested in doing ride-alongs, I think we would like to know kind of what those times are. So like Monday through Friday, or what were the times again? I'm sorry.
Okay, so we went to a 5/8 schedule, and so day shift. 3 of the squads on day shift have the original 6 to 4 schedule, or I'm sorry, actually I didn't take that back. They actually went to 8s, so I think it's from 7 to 4, something like that. And then there's 1 10-hour shift. So on each shift, each swing, so days and swings, there's also another 10-hour shift. One for each of the area command or each of the shifts or the swings. And that way we still had officers on 8 410s for 1 squad of day shift, 1 squad of swing shift, then all of graveyard are still on 410s. And in each area command, their days are a little bit different. They're kind of staggered. So Commander Webber would actually be able to answer like the way his shifts are scheduled.
Okay.
But for across the board, we did that, and I think it gives about a 13% increase in actual staffing across the board by going to the 5/8s. Just given the fact that we don't have any overlapping squads right now. It allows up to 8 officers per watch, extra per watch. So for 8 more on swings, 8 more on graves, stuff like that. That way, we don't have any more of the standalone squads where you used to have, a squad that started off with 8, through sheer attrition and everything else. By the end of the bid, they're down to 4 officers and they're a standalone squad. So now we have that overlap of a minimum of 2 squads working at all times. So.
Okay,
Could you,
so there is a question. Oh, go ahead.
I just was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about how many officers are, say, on patrolling the Northeast Heights or the Southeast Heights, for example, in the evenings. If you could just kind of give us a feel for the number of officers that are out on swing.
So Commander Weber, do you have your lineup? Just kind of give them a round out of what the total numbers would be.
Yeah, so the swing shift is stacked 16 officers every day of the week. And then there are on graveyard, as you get into the 10 o'clock hour, it depends on the day of the week. It's anywhere from 16 to 24 officers who work. And then it's a little bit dependent on, so like at 10 o'clock at night, you've got swing officers and grave officers working. And so there's actually, for a couple of hours there, it's around, I don't know, 35 or something like that, but that doesn't last very long. So in general, on the day shift, it's all staffed based on, obviously I was given an allotment, and I can tell you I was given 70 officers out of that number that the DC mentioned. I was given 70 to allot across my 3 shifts and 7 days a week. So it's allotted based on when we perceive ourselves the busiest, based on our data, and when we're the lightest, we try to allocate less resources. So the day shift goes anywhere from I think 13 officers on like a Monday morning, where it hasn't been shown to be as busy, up to the 16. And then swing shift is always at 16, and then graveyard, it varies between 16 and 24. So the goal this year for me as the area commander up here, because we all got to allocate our numbers based on what we wanted within certain restrictions. The goal for me has been to beef up the nighttime shift, simply because most of our in-progress crimes are happening at night. And I want the resources for there to be coverage of 911 calls, but also being able to respond to do proactive type police work. It doesn't do us any good to chase our tails and just take reports of things that have already happened. We need to be having a presence out there and actively attacking the problem. So that's kind of a, I guess, not so brief rundown of what you're getting.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so there's a question in the chat about morale. So do you anticipate with the change from 10s to 8s that there's going to be a shift or an impact in morale with the officers?
I think there is. There's, we wanted to keep the 410s. I think when Chief Medina came back, we went back and moved the field back to 410s again. To be perfectly honest, it's not something that we wanted to do. It's something that was just mathematically we had to do. I mean, just the math doesn't add up to, for officer safety issues, for response times, and for just, overall police services that we're required to provide. It just doesn't work on 410s with the staffing that we currently have assigned to field services. So I can expect them to be, the field not to be too pleased with it. But it wasn't intentional to, to ruffle any feathers or anything else. Just mathematically, that's the way it worked out. And the officers that I've talked to are understanding of it. I mean, we had the choice of 410s, 5/8s, or 312s, and everybody I talked to across the board didn't want to do the 12s. Everybody wanted to stay on the 410s, which is why we had to compromise and make, we left graveyard on 410s just for that, because graves is a tough time for officers to, spend on 5/8s, you get essentially 1 day off because you're recovering on that first day off, from having to stay up till 8 o'clock in the morning. And so we wanted to keep the graveyards on 410s just for that reason. And then each watch has day shift and swing shift, both have at least one 410 squad in that as well. So it was a mixture of the best we could do with the personnel that we had available.
Okay. Willie, I think there's another question in the chat.
Yeah, one of our participants wanted to know from your background, you talked about being in lots of different areas, auto theft, burglary, homicide, et cetera. And so the question is, how are you able to develop, how do you think officers can develop community ties? Or just if you're constantly shifting areas or expertise, or areas, or how can you develop real expertise in a particular type of crime investigation by continuing to switch areas you're working in?
So for me, like when I changed from being a sergeant from the field, I went to, and I got promoted into the field services like everybody does when you first initially get promoted. I tested for and got into auto theft, and I stayed there from 2014 until about 2018. So I stayed there for a number of years until I got promoted again. And so for the most of the time when an officer goes into a specialized unit, they tend to stay there for an extended period of time until either through retirement or transfer for promotions. And like as far as expertise, I think, you know, one of the things we're doing now for our detectives is we actually instituted a detective academy. We recognize there were some shortfalls in some of our investigations, and, you know, having new officers come in, new detectives taking up positions to where it was, you know, taking over, you know, child cases, taking over homicides, things like that, you know, these important cases, and then they weren't properly trained for the job. So one of the things we did was institute the Detective Academy, which kind of covers all that, where they get the basics in going from, you know, basic investigations, report, or you know, how to do search warrants, proper case up-outs, and just proper investigations in general. So that's one of the things we're doing to kind of build that knowledge and skill base. And once officers have that, even when if they do transfer back out, they take that knowledge with them in the past, you know, take it back out into the field or wherever they go on within their careers. You know, one of the things we used to have a problem with is somebody would become in a specialized position for so long that when they left, they took that knowledge base with them and never really passed it down because, you know, they were, you know, the per se expert in something. So everybody always looked to somebody to say, you know, this person's the expert. Talk to, you know, Bob or whoever. And, you know, when Bob left, he took all that knowledge, skills, and ability with him, and then we were left, you know, training up the new guy again. And so through the Detective Academy, we're trying to kind of fix that problem.
And what about, are there some officers, I'm actually thinking of an analogy of medicine, to be honest with you. The general thing is most doctors want to be specialists, and what you need if you develop community relationships is generalists who are out in the street, just staying in the community. Is that an issue where officers want to move up into being specialized in auto theft or something as opposed to just on the street?
No, not really, not anymore. I mean, in the past, when I was first on the department, like I said, I've been here for 21 years. And, you know, when I tested into K-9, I tested against 20 other people. I tested into SWAT, I tested against 20 some people. What we're seeing now in some of our specialized units is, you know, a lot of officers are happy being in the field. They like, you know, they're specialized as field calls. I've seen guys who are very seasoned on the department who've been around. I mean, rookies by no means, who have been perfectly happy to stay where they're at. And I think as we go through, you know, finding that person who's willing to take the on-call, and, you know, the big thing is it's stressful on families when you have an on-call status of a detective who has to, you know, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and respond to a homicide or something like that. So we're seeing more officers today that would rather stay in the field and take those other calls. But the ones who do get that bug to go into a specialized unit have been doing a very good job.
I have another question, a general question, which I've actually heard from several people. So this person says, I've lived in the same house on Snow Heights Northeast, just west of Eubanks, since '85. And I love my neighborhood. I've gotten to meet many folks while walking my dogs, currently a dog named Scarlet. But in the last few years, we have gotten 5 problematic homes between Glorieta and Garcia. The police keep getting calls to come out. They come, settle things down, leave, and within a few weeks, another problem comes up with a I understand the police might not have grounds for arrests, but what can we do as it is truly impacting the community? Most recently, there was a homeless encampment at Blake's, and many stolen items identified when distributed. Another of the homes that we are, police and community, can come together. Isn't there something we, the police and community, can come together to address? He apologizes for this being such a long question, but it has to do with homeless, abandoned or derelict homes that are abandoned but are occupied by homeless people, sometimes that cause crime and trouble.
I mean, that's actually a great question. And I think, what we've seen for the last 18 months of the pandemic is, the moratorium on evictions that have come through. And we've had several cases where people are squatting in houses. And, for whatever one reason or another, we can't contact either the responsible party who owns the property, or if they do, it turns into a civil issue on, if they've had permission in the past to be there and getting them removed. Just based on, P&M's wasn't turning anyone's power off. The water wasn't getting turned off, and no judge would sign an eviction order during COVID. One of the things that we've done is part of the ADAPT program is, one of the things we ask, and we always do, is that when you have an issue with a certain house, is make that telephone call and make sure that it gets created a call for service. And what that does is it ups your points on the ADAPT program, so they're able to actually start tracking it. But when you do call in, just make sure that you're calling on that address itself and not like listing your own address. That way the points get attributed to the actual house that the problem is occurring from.
Yeah. That's the person actually identified all these houses are actually being occupied by homeowners or renters.
Homeowners or renters?
Yeah, but they're causing trouble in the neighborhood.
And that's one of the things that the ADAPT program does. It looks at nuisance housing and starts to, what it does, it's a collaboration between AFR, code enforcement, and APD. And some of them are called crime only houses, which means that there's nothing that code can really do with it. But what happens is it starts to take a scale. And once it reaches a certain threshold, legal action can be taken through the city. As far as we used to have the old criminal nuisance abatement unit. That now falls under code enforcement. And so code enforcement actually takes up that role as far as, once that house reaches a certain threshold on any kind of legal action against, especially like rentals. Rentals are tough because, then you can kind of reach out and work with the homeowners themselves instead of the actual renters. Another thing we've been doing with rental properties, especially with out-of-town owners, especially for like Airbnbs, is I have a meeting actually coming up with the Attorney General's office to kind of deal with that same thing with out-of-town hotel owners and rental properties. When the person who owns that property that's become a derelict property is out of town and is simply using it only for a funding stream and has no real ties or connections to the community and could care less if that property is taken care of, or if the tenants that they have in there are helpful within the community or a blight on that community, and holding the actual property owners accountable. But I'm not sure of the specifics on that yet because I'm meeting with the AG's office, Attorney General's office, next week on that. So actually we'll be able to give Commander Weber an update on that whenever we get that kind of hammered out a little bit better.
But so what would you recommend DC Brown for this individual? She's saying that, or they're saying that another one of the homes, there's drugs, coming and going with bike riders like all day long. So what would you suggest that the neighbors do when they're seeing illegal activity like that?
When they see that activity, notify, like I said, call 242 cops if it's a non-emergency. Make that call for service. So what it does is it creates that trail of information that gets into our system, allows us to track and see how many multiple calls have come in for that location. Once we get if it happens once or twice and it's not that reoccurring thing, I mean, Commander Weber and his PRT team with Sergeant Signs, they'll start to see and they'll get that information, and then they can come up with plans on how best to address it, either through Sergeant Signs. And I see we have what's called a SIG alert. What they do is they put out information on good arrests, problem houses that were taken care of. I see them from Sergeant Signs and the Northeast PRT all the time. and I'm sure that they actually have cards that they can give out, or their contact information to reach out directly to Sergeant Sines and Commander Weber, and then they can actually put a plan together that includes narcotics detectives, their PRT units, what other specialized units can be involved in some of those houses that you're having issues with.
One of the questions I have on that is, does the city still have the Safe City Strike Force?
No, it's more of the ADAPT program now, which
It's
is
the
which follows,
ADAPT program.
yeah,
Okay.
which I'm talking about, which follows under the code enforcement, and actually it's run through AFR through the fire marshals.
And what does ADAPT stand for?
I don't know.
Well, what's his purpose? I
To be
mean,
honest.
what's his
What's his
purpose?
purpose then? Yeah, what's his goal and purpose?
So the goal and purpose is to identify those properties that are either run down in violation of code or crime only houses. And what it does is it applies a numerical score to those houses. And when it reaches a certain threshold, the city can actually take legal action against the owner or the occupants of that property, whether it's a court order for, fixing up wiring, to cleaning up the front yard, or anything that the city deems as a nuisance. Kind of the same thing that the Safe City Strike Force and the nuisance abatement unit used to do.
So is that information readily available? Like if there's a house that somebody wanted to look up to see what their score was, is that public information, or how would they get that information?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but I think that's kind of it has to reach a certain point before it actually gets any kind of legal action is taken. Then it would become an open source, Freedom of Information Act kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's not, they keep, we have to be very, very careful about ensuring that we're not targeting people who are actually legitimately needing police help. And unfortunately, we see it more in apartment complexes necessarily than one particular house, but people will call due to legitimate reasons, and the police show up at their door, and it starts generating these reports. And the next thing you know, it's all of a sudden code enforcement is looking at them, and that's not the goal. So we have to make sure that we're very careful about. There's a whole screening process of how that works, and I don't believe that when those calls are generated, that it's just automatically, that the public can look at a particular address and say, oh, is this program under ADAPT? I don't believe that that's publicly available.
And Martissa put in that the acronym is Abandoned and Dilapidated Abatement Property Team.
There you go.
Which does not surprise me. You did not know that. So on that line, someone says that rather use points for problem homes, has APD considered rigging these, nipping these problems in the bud by going to the home and addressing the issues immediately, rather than having a nuisance home get so many points and having the neighborhood wait months for a solution?
And that's kind of what I was talking about your PRT with, Sergeant Symes, is letting them know what your issues and problem houses are. And that way they can be addressed immediately instead of waiting. It's one of those things, if that's the reason we ask for people to make calls for service, because if we don't know about a certain house or issues, and if they just simply come in through, the random calls, sometimes it's going to take a minute or two to get back to Commander Weber or, Sergeant Symes, and where they can come up with a comprehensive plan on how to deal with that. So, the best thing to do is if you have one of those houses, and I know Commander Weber, since he's worked for me since he was down in the valley, he's pretty on top of his stuff. He knows the system. He's been around a day or two and knows exactly who to call, and he's come up with some pretty good plans in the past.
Yeah, I think, obviously we have to know about, so I get that a lot. I will have somebody contact either our crime prevention specialist, whom you all know, or they go to their city councilor and they say, such and such house is a huge problem. And we'll say, okay, we don't know about this house at all. And we will run, some background information on it. What we'll find out is we don't have any calls there. And so we'll have people claiming, there's drug activity day and night at this house. And our call system doesn't show anything. And so while I I think that all of the officers in the Northeast and in the city really pride themselves on knowing their beat, so to speak, and their geographical area. You know, the city is a big place. You know, there are thousands and thousands of houses and residential streets and all that. I mean, it's not something where we just kind of know, oh, there's a problem house over in this area. You know, there has to be some indication that it's there before we would necessarily know about it. And so sometimes people, you know, we don't know about it. The other thing is that the idea that, just send some people out and kind of take care of the problem. It really depends on what the problem is. So if there are crimes being committed that we can establish, of course, we can charge people appropriately. Sometimes what people bring up are chronic issues of that are not necessarily crimes. Like, you know, there are people that come to this house all hours of the night. Okay, that could be an indicator of you know, nefarious activity, but it's not illegal for me to have somebody come visit my house at 2 a.m. It just isn't. And so the police are not going to come out there and arrest someone who is visiting a house at 2 a.m. And I think that everyone, you know, understands that kind of thing. That's just a quick example of, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit more for us to actually be able to do a law enforcement response, but that doesn't mean that we can't address if they're, you know, I've had people contact me about problem houses in all sectors of the Northeast. And there are times I remember specifically getting complaints about a house that just had a lot of loud parties with teenagers, high school and college age kids in the pool in the backyard last summer. And, you know, they really couldn't put their finger on anything illegal other than the noise. But I ended up just personally going to the door and knocking on the door and speaking with the parents, and the parents actually were a little bit shocked, obviously, as that tends to happen, to find out that they were leaving town and this stuff was going on. And knock on wood, I have not gotten another call for service at that house. So, you know, we can address things, but we do need to know about it.
Well, and can you, I mean, you and I have talked about you know, I had a neighbor contact me about you know, a house in my general area where they thought there were some, you know, a lot of stolen cars showing up without any license plates, and they were there and then they were gone. And so, I mean, one thing that you said that you could do was to have field briefings kind of in that location. And so if this individual is concerned, could they contact you and kind of give you the general area where they feel this is happening, and possibly have some of the field officers do their briefings there and have kind of more of a presence of law enforcement in that general area?
Absolutely. We like the field briefings, which, you know, just for those who might question what that is, the officers have to brief every shift before they go to work. We try to get them out in the community to where they're showing a good presence at different locations. So we do them at locations where we have problems with drag racing. We do them at locations where we've had recent, you know, other disturbance type calls. Sometimes we just do them at locations where the community wants to see more officer presence. And I think that the officers enjoy doing it. And it's a great way for us to interact with the community. One of the things that we are pushing forward here in the next couple of weeks that DC can talk a little bit more about is we are now trying to identify areas where the public would like to join us for those briefings. In other words, we would put it out there that we were going to be at a particular location, and members of the community would be invited to go to that briefing to sort of show unity with, you know, not only to communicate with the officers, but to show that unity. I've told people, and forgive me for those of you that have heard this speech before, but neighborhoods that are involved and show a presence out in the street will always drive away a lot of that element. Where I continually see, whether it's package theft or other crimes going on, is in areas where you go up to they're all along the street, the subdivision, and you ask them who their neighbors are, and they're like, yeah, I don't know anybody who lives on my street. I've lived here 20 years, but I cannot tell you my neighbor across the street. I don't know their name. Those neighborhoods traditionally have more crime. They just do.
On that line, Commander Weber, If someone uses the APD app to report a problem home, is that information included in the problem home call to 242 cops? Or is it a separate information stream?
I'm sorry, ask me that one more time.
If someone uses the APD app to report a problem home, is that information from the app included in the problem home calls to 242 cops?
Yes, so the app is actually just another way to generate a call for service.
Okay.
And I encourage people to use it because I do know there are sometimes long wait times to get through to the non-emergency number due to staff. We're like everybody else. We have the help wanted sign out. We're trying to get more staffing, and so if you get on the phone and you think I don't want to be on hold, the app is a great way to generate that call.
Okay. There's another question was up here a long time ago, so I'm gonna go back and we'll come back to this later. One of the people wants to know if limited officers in the field, are there common calls for service that can be routed through a different venue where citizens can get a resolution without taxing officers' times? And that's my cat, and I'll put myself on mute.
Yes. The short answer to that is yes. We, as a department, have always tried to identify ways to be more efficient with what we have. And especially with the pandemic, where we were trying to limit face-to-face contact where it wasn't necessary. I think what we discovered was there are a lot of calls that we can either handle through online reporting, we can handle through officers making a phone call to somebody, but not necessarily driving to their house and having to contact them over things. And so, yes, we do look for ways to free up the officers, and we're always on the hunt for that. I know Chief Medina is always got new ideas about how to do things. He's always trying new things.
Just to kind of touch a little bit on that too, is right now we're in a hiring frenzy per se to see if we can get more of our telephone report unit operators hired. We want to have that staffed 24/7 if we can. It kind of comes down to everything else right now. Is just trying to, people are at home or want to stay home and do whatever, but trying to get somebody who wants to come in and go to work to fill some of those positions. One of the things we have been doing is using our salary savings for officers that we don't have, and we're in the process now of trying to hire 30 PSAs, which I know every area command and every sergeant would love to have their own personal PSA. I think in the Valley, when I was the commander down there, I think we had, by the time I got moved out the first of this month, I think I had a whole whopping one. And so, with PSAs coming on board, it creates two things. It alleviates, some of the calls that officers have to take in the field, your accidents, some of your property crimes they can respond to. But it also helps in the future for staffing. You already have somebody in the pipeline who, is getting that experience, getting time on with the city, and who's already, a viable candidate for officers within 2 years whenever they meet that age threshold. And so if you know any young people who want to join APD as a PSA, we're in the process now of getting those spots filled. So.
Okay, I think there's a couple more comments or questions. So I guess this one is to me. It says, Vicki, I just brought up another issue. My neighbors have been discussing unlicensed cars. There seems to be an abundance of cars on the street without license plates. Can't the police do a blitz on these folks as the thefts going on often are committed by people driving unlicensed vehicles? Any comments on that?
Yeah, actually, so for the past 18 months, we had issues with MVD being kind of everything was shut down. And so when MVD opened back up, you had wait times of 3 to 6 months to get an appointment, to get your car registered, to get a plate, and even to go in and get your driver's license renewed. I think they're back to full swing now. They're kind of back caught up. We actually just put a press release out today saying that we're back in the enforcement action on vehicle registration and plates. But for the past 18 months, it was, by no fault of their own, a lot of people couldn't get them. they couldn't get license plates. They, you'd buy a car, or they'd go, get their car registered or redone. And if they couldn't do it online or, through the mail, it was, they can't go down and get a VIN inspection. Certain things, if they bought a car from out of state, they're not getting a driver or license plate for them. So they were running into issues with just time from MVD. And when they had, 3 to 6 months MVD wait times just to get your license plate for your car, it kind of, just to be fair to everybody, it's kind of hard not to have some empathy for those folks who are, having to wait. I mean, nobody likes to, the old stories of waiting in MVD lines. It got worse over the pandemic. So it should be back up and running now. And officers are cognizant of the fact that MVD is caught up, and we are targeting those cars now.
There's another question here. A person asked, I heard gunshots the other night and then saw tweets that it was the police testing their shot spotter system. And the A, is that correct? And B, please say to call if we hear gunshots, but I don't know if it is truly gunshots or fireworks or what. And even though I believe it was gunshots, it sounds far away. And I don't even know what direction it came from. What should we do about that?
So yes, the answer is yes, we were testing gunshot technology the other night. And they've been testing it around the city for the last 2 weeks. So that is true. The rumor is true. Now, I don't know if the gunshots this individual heard were those particular gunshots. I hope they were. But yes, we've the Northeast Area Command does have some of the shot spotter technology down off of the Carlisle corridor area between Candelaria up to a little bit north of Montgomery. And so,
Commander, could I interrupt and ask you, for those who aren't familiar with that technology, could someone just kind of give us a brief overview of that technology and how APD is using it, please?
Yeah, it's an acoustic, there are sensors, acoustic sensors that are installed in locations where within a kind of a fence, if you will, and or within a geographical boundary, and through software that's much more sophisticated than anything that I can personally work. They are able to use advanced mathematics, algorithms, sound waves, all that stuff, and can actually zero it in. I want to say within 3 meters. I could be off by just a little bit, but it will zero in where those shots came from. We are able to tell if it's rapid gunfire. We are able to tell in some cases how many shots, if it's multiple, if it's single. And in fact, the officers have an app. They all have an app on their phone. They get a notification when it happens, and they can even listen to it. Like if they don't, I heard one of the comment was, how do I know if it's fireworks or not? So a lot of times maybe you can't tell, but the system can tell. They're very, very good, and they review the shots as they come in, the operators do. And it's very good. It's a very accurate system. And one of the things that used to happen when I was in the field was you would get these calls, shots fired around Wyoming and Osuna. Well, I'd have one neighbor, at the 9,000 block of Osuna call in. I would have somebody else at Wyoming and Montgomery call in. And as an officer responding to that, that's a rather large area to try and determine where exactly did this come from. And so with the technology, it actually zeroes the officers in. We've been locating a lot more shell casings, which help us make cases and link guns together and that kind of thing. So I think it's a good thing for us. So I don't know. I think if that answers the person's question, but that's.
Is that technology, you mentioned the Carlisle corridor, how widely is it available in the district? Is just on that street corner? Is it farther?
No. There's a map, and I don't know if those are publicly available. They might be, but there's a map that we have that shows the boundaries of it. And
okay.
So it's Carlisle. It's like basically the university in Carlisle area, east to about San Mateo, and then north if you draw kind of it's not exactly a box, but you get the idea. And it actually can detect things outside the fence, but they will only vouch for the reliability with inside the boundaries of the map.
So I think the person wanted to also know if she hears or we hear something that we don't know if it's gunshots or not, in particular is outside that area, should we call it or what should we do?
I think if you believe that you've heard gunshots, you should always call that in. You know, the old saying goes of everybody thinks their neighbor is going to call, and then it turns out nobody calls. So I think you should call if you think it's fire, or I'm sorry, if you think it's gunshots. If you're not sure what it is, I don't know that I have any advice for you either way. I mean, we do have limited resources, and we do get those calls where it's, well, this is fireworks, but I'd rather err on the side of caution. We've had instances where people have called in gunshots and we've gotten nothing but a call of gunshots, and then we find somebody who's injured in the street. So it's definitely worth calling if you think you've heard it.
Is that system going to be set up citywide at some point? Do you know?
It will never, I say never. I don't believe it will ever cover the entire city. You're talking about an amount of technology and equipment that's probably not feasible, but it is targeted based on historically high gun violence areas.
Okay. There's a question of changing tactics a little bit. Which crimes have the highest clearance rate and the lowest? Homicide particularly is something like 15%, this person thinks. And what are the reasons for low or high clearance rates?
I'm just going to read that.
Sure, that would be great.
Which crimes have the highest clearance rates?
So I think our latest report on homicides was around a 40% clearance rate of those, but that's ever changing depending on where they're at, cases and arrests and so forth. I don't know, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, and I don't have the data in front of me. I don't know, the DC worked investigations for a long time. I don't know which crimes traditionally have the highest clearance rates, so I'll kind of plead ignorance on that.
Yeah, I'll be right back. Let me put my dog, just barking real quick. Let me deal with that. I'll be right back home in a second.
Okay, so while we're waiting for that comment, Commander Weber, how did National Night Out go? Do you and Francesca have a report on where you were and how that went?
You know what? I've been doing a lot of talking. I think this would be a great time for Francesca to weigh in. But yes, it went well.
Good.
I let him do all the talking because he's a guy in charge, so he deserves to do all the talking, right? Just kidding. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Francesca Perdue. I am the crime prevention specialist here in the Northeast. We had a very busy but a very successful National Night Out. In the Northeast Area Command, we had 28 scheduled events, and so I think in the other area commands they had the max of 12, so we were more than double every other area command. So everyone knows that National Night Out is very, very busy in the Northeast, so we actually got some help from Force. They sent out some of their detectives to come and help us, and so that was really useful. What I did is that when I got the list, Commander Weber and I kind of set up a plan of what we were going to do, and we dispersed it amongst the watches. And so we assigned to day shift, swing shift, and graveyard. And so we kind of all pulled together and we were able to get all 28 events covered. So officers attended. Yeah. That was our goal, is that we wanted to make sure that there was an officer in attendance, at least for 15 minutes at every single event. So it was able to get covered. And I've seen a trend recently. I think people have realized that National Night Out itself is very busy. And so people are now signing up their events for their neighborhoods either the day before, the weekend before, or the weekend after National Night Out. So last Thursday, I attended another event, and the Saturday before National Night Out, I went to a National Night Out event, and I have 2 more this week on Thursday and Friday. So they're all kind of in the idea of National Night Out, but I think people have gotten smarter and they realize that they'll get more time with an officer if they schedule it, around the date.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. Deputy Chief Brown, you are going to answer the question about clearance rates.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. My wife,
No,
my
that's okay.
daughter had to buy shoes, and my little dog's yappy. She's
Not a problem.
So, it just depends on which one it is. So for our violent crimes, homicides up at around 40%. Some of our others, some of the if it's a sex crime, it depends on if it's familiar or if it's going to be a stranger. I think they're more along the lines of about 15 to 30% at the time. Our property crimes, when I was in auto theft, that we had, the clearance rate was right around 30%. But it always changes and fluctuates depending on, we have what's called APHIS and CODIS cases. So for a lot of the crimes, property crimes, and the sex crimes and things like that, where you're reliant on physical evidence, it's going to be, how fast do we get that through the crime lab, and if we find fingerprints, that's got to be submitted by the detective to the district attorney's office. Because we're not getting warrants on those right now. We're just submitting those cases. So we can look at it a couple different ways as far as how they're cleared. They're some of them are cleared pending further leads, and so I think the biggest thing is just how those cases come in and what offender information we have. When I was a sergeant of auto theft, a lot of times we wouldn't get some of the, if we get a call of a stolen car and from the field, and the report simply says, I woke up in the morning and my car's gone. There's no video evidence. There's nothing. There's no latent evidence to go off of. Then they're having to wait to see if that car gets recovered, and when it does, if there's any kind of latent, either fingerprints, blood, DNA, anything like that, to kind of tie somebody into that, or if we had somebody sitting in the car and arrest at the time. And so it's going to be pretty much case specific on how those get cleared out. Hope that didn't be too convoluted for you.
No, I think that was fine. Thank you.
The questioner said that 15-20% for homicides came from someone at the mayor's crime initiative is where that number came from. Someone else asked, is there any discussion to start patrols in side streets through the neighborhoods? I would appreciate an effort to start cruisers to taking short patrols through each neighborhood, maybe every other weekend, just to so that you're in our neighborhood.
That's one of those things where when we ask our officers to be proactive and they're going from call to call, from the start of their shift to the end of their shift, that's kind of what we were talking about the field briefings earlier, is we ask that, if you have that free time to write a report, if it's a problem area and if it's been identified, the initial 60-day operation that we had for anti-crime operations was actually started by Commander Weber. That was successful in the Northeast. We moved that down in the Valley, and we now have that going on in the foothills. A lot of those recommendations actually came from the CPCs on where we wanted, actually the referrals, where the problems were in those neighborhoods were. And so whenever we get, it's kind of like what Commander Weber was saying earlier, if we don't know where the problem areas are, that's why, if you just want a random patrol, or if you want something an officer to cruise your street, there's a lot of streets in Albuquerque, and it's hard for officers to hit every one of them. And so, but if you see those continuing problems and issues and concerns, call your substation and just request one. And I know for a fact that Commander Weber will make sure an officer gets to that area.
Okay.
That's all.
Any other questions for?
There was a question a long time ago, which we never got to. And
Go ahead.
has there been any discussion at the chief's office or among the DCs that you know of restricting movement between area commands, or having a minimum time of service in one area as is done in other police departments?
No, so our bid is part of our collective bargaining agreement, and the officers can bid every year. So what we like to see is the officers, a lot of them bid for a sergeant, and they bid for a chain of command. And I know that, a lot of people are really happy with Commander Weber's running of the Northeast, and that trickles down all the way, to the frontline officer. He's got a good group of sergeants, lieutenants, and those people follow him. It's that familiarization, that trust. And as far as keeping someone from going to different area command, no, there's no talk on that right now of restricting movement.
Francesca just put in a link in the chat, which you can copy, which gives you more information about the ADAPT program for those who are more interested in that. And someone has
Thank you, Francesca.
Yeah, and there's someone else who has thanked DC Brown and Commander Weber for your hard work and taking time to answer all the questions. We appreciate that. It's been very helpful.
All right. Okay, thank you. I guess we will continue with our meeting agenda then. So old business, we're still debating about in-person meetings. We had anticipated that we would start in September. Now that has moved to October. And I think what we will have to do is just kind of go on a month-by-month basis until we can determine what is going to happen with the Delta variant. And so we have a poll that has been presented here with 2 questions. Do you have an interest in returning to in-person meetings? Yes or no? And when do you feel we should go back to in-person meetings? October, November, or later? So go ahead and answer those 2 questions. Based on that information, we'll be able to take a look at when we may be able to do in-person meetings. I'm not sure what the status is of North Domingo Baca. Kelly, do you have an update on if we're able to do in-person meetings there, or have things changed like within the last couple of weeks?
I have not been in touch recently. I was told that everything would be operational by the end of August, the last time I talked to the manager. So, I'm sure we could probably do in-person meetings there. It's really up to each individual council at this point. I have been trying to get a PA system. They've sort of put a stop to that with the Delta virus and all that, but we could always put the effort in and see how it works.
Okay. Well, let's see what we get as far as answers to those 2 questions, and we can kind of take it from there. But I would say for the September meeting, it will probably be a Zoom meeting. If that changes, we'll definitely let everyone know. And okay, so for new business, we typically have a Council of Chairs meeting, which consists of the council members, the chair of the councils, and the vice chairs of all of the councils, and we have a secretary. So those individuals meet on a monthly basis to talk about concerns that we have, how the councils are going, how we're moving forward, what we want to be working on from a strategic point of view, some of the issues that we'll be having with communication, what's going on with the CASA, those types of agendas. So what we would like to do is we're going to extend an invitation to the 2 individuals that are responsible for community engagement with out of APD, and that is Lieutenant Jennifer Garcia and Pastor David Walker. And we would like to invite them to our Council of Chairs meeting for August to see how we can work more collaboratively with that community engagement section of APD. So I just wanted to pass that on. And let's see, I think that's about everything from the CPC side. So for the next couple of months, for September and October, we are going to ask Detective Willoughby if he would come and speak to us. So for October, for September, October, November, we have several individuals and units from APD that would like to come and talk to us. One of them is talking about the Vision Zero. One is the Real-Time Crime Center. Another one is IAFD, which is Internal Force Division, would like to do a presentation on how internal investigations have changed. Talk about the backlogs in investigations and how the EFIT team is working, which is the External Force Investigation Team. And let's see. And Lieutenant Jennifer Garcia will be at our meeting in September to talk about her role with public engagement. So we have a lot of interesting speakers over the next several months. So we're hoping that you'll join our meetings for those. Now I would like to turn it over to Sergeant Sims to do the APD presentation section of our meeting to give us some crime stats and service call information, use of force information. So Sergeant Sims.
All right. So for the month of July, property crimes are as follows, and this is July 1st through July 31st. Property crimes, larceny, that includes shoplifting, fraud, and forgery, 128. Auto burglary, 51. Vandalism, 38. Auto theft, 69. Recovered stolen vehicles, 15. Commercial burglary, 49. Residential burglary, 24. And disturbance calls, 96. Crimes pertaining to people, family offenses, which would be domestic violence, 276. Fight in progress, 14. Aggravated assault battery, 89. Robbery, that encompasses all types, 28. Criminal sexual penetration, 2. And homicide, 1. Calls for service total for the month was 7,878. Moving along to our use of force statistical data for the month of July. In the Northeast Area Command, we had 5 level 1 uses of force, 5 level 2 uses of force, and 1 level 3 use of force, for a total of 11 uses of force in the Northeast Area Command. Force per 1,000 calls, the Northeast was at 1.4. In terms of the breakdown of the calls associated with use of force for the month of July, family dispute, 8, suspicious vehicles and persons and disturbance calls, both 7, sex offense and aggravated assault and battery both had 4, suicide had 3, aggravated drivers, shots fired, wanted person SWAT activation, and on-site suspicious vehicles all had 2. Shoplifting, fire calls, bait vehicle activation, behavioral health, on-site disturbance, commercial burglary, narcotics, armed robbery of a commercial business, fight in progress, and drunk driver all had 1. That would conclude all the statistical data. I would stand for any questions if you have any at this time.
Anyone have any questions on the crime stats that have been presented?
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant Sims.
You're
What's
welcome.
going on with PRT? What are you guys working on?
Well, we have been focusing on the Manal corridor. In particular, Bel Air Park has been a focus or a focal point for us right now, due to a lot of complaints of narcotics activity. We've made a number of arrests in the area, and also been able to do some community outreach and connect individuals with services offered through the city, and also partners with the city. We continue to partner with Lobo Little League as well too, as it's their off season, and they've been prone to a number of vandalism and thefts within the area. They just recently had some upgrades this past season, which have been helping with that as well. But we've been also trying to get some extra eyes on it during the day and keep people who are doing drugs and other nefarious activity out of the area. Other than that, we have 2 officers currently in PRT. We just opened up 2 more positions, which that should we should be able to fill those within the next couple of weeks. So we're excited about that.
So how many officers do you have now in PRT?
Currently, I have 2, and they're opening up 2 more, so that will bring it to a total of 4 officers.
Okay.
But again, tell me what PRT stands for. I'm sorry. I don't
Proactive
remember.
Response Team. I know we're in love with acronyms within the government.
Well,
so.
all fields are. So thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we have a response to our poll. Do you have an interest in returning to in-person meetings? 42% say yes, 58% have said no. When do you feel we should go back to in-person meetings? October, 25%, November, 42%, and later 33%. So we will take this information into account when we're thinking about returning to in-person meetings and when we may be able to do that. Let's see. There's a question, I think, from Dina. If we see someone who needs help but hasn't committed a crime, is there another number besides 242 cops that we can call? Like what kind of help? Like someone that's homeless or, I mean.
So there's times when we're in the community and we see someone who is in need of some kind of resource. Maybe they're intoxicated or something like that. But some calling 242 cops, sometimes there's a little bit of a wait time. And we didn't know if there was another number that could be called with the new units that are being created in the city. Is there anything like that available?
Like with the community, like with our safety, the new safety department?
Yeah. Is there a number for them that we can call directly, or is everything routed through APD?
So there's actually, and Francesca actually kind of spoke up to this on my chat, but I think it was meant for everyone. You can call 311 and ask to be put in contact with Coast, especially if people experiencing homelessness. If they're categorized as like a down and out, somebody's passed out in the corner, or it's either if it's a medical condition or something like that, we'd still ask you to call 911. If it's just somebody who's in need of help, who's unhoused, that's a good call for the 311. And actually, the family and community just got 3 new navigators, or actually not navigators, but outreach coordinators, who actually go out and follow up on those 311 calls. Right now, they have about 250 encampments citywide mapped out on their GIS program. And one of the things they do is once they get these new 6 people, they just got them hired, and I think they're going through training. They'll be available starting next week. They'll actually go out and get people connected to services as far as housing, mental health, substance abuse. And, if those people are amenable to the help, they're the direct connection that can go out and kind of assist them.
Thank you.
Good to know.
And if anybody doesn't have any more questions for me, I'm going to jump off, and thank you all for having me.
Okay, yes, thanks so much for attending tonight.
Thank you. And I put my email in the chat as well, so everybody should have my email addresses.
Yeah.
So
will you be applying for the full-time job if you're interim now? Can we ask you that?
Yeah, absolutely. I am.
Okay, great,
So thank you.
great. Okay, have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Chief Brown. Thanks.
So is there anything else from the council? Any other questions, any concerns? Also, this is time for community concerns. If you have other issues that we haven't discussed tonight, please put your questions or your comments in the chat. So we'll give folks a minute to think about that. Let's see. Okay. I think that's everything for this evening. I wanted to thank everyone from APD that attended this evening and provided input and answered the questions. It's always nice to see our officers. So I would call for an adjournment of the meeting this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, we will
Thank-
see everyone next month.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you. See
Bye-bye.
ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
There.
I see you.
Oh,
What's up, gents?
You better look out.
good to see you, Kelly. How you doing?
Good to see you too. How's the search going?
It's coming along. So still at it. So
Sounds good. All right. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Very nice.
yeah, she's excited. She starts school on Friday, so we're getting her
In
prep
person?
kindergarten.
In person?
Yeah, in person.
Very nice.
So,
All right.
yeah, the two older start tomorrow morning at one goes in at like 7 o'clock and then the other one at 8:30, and then she starts on Friday. So
Oh, the summer was so short.
it was.
All right. Well, you folks have a good evening and talk.
Yeah, you too. Good seeing you again. Take
All right.
care.